There is no question that Sam Raimi's early 2000s Spider-Man trilogy was a game changer for the superhero genre, starring Tobey Maguire as the iconic hero Spider-Man and Kirsten Dunst as the love interest Mary Jane Watson. We got 3 movies from Raimi, 2 that were received with great reception and revolutionised the superhero genre, and 1 that was, well, let's just say it didn't have the same effect as the other 2 did. In this video I'll be covering the behind the scenes secrets and conflicts that came with both Spider-Man 3 and the Unmade Spider-Man 4, as well as talking about what caused the eventual demise of Spider-Man 4. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man took the world by storm when it was first released in June of 2002. The superhero epic became the first film to make over $100 million at the box office in its first weekend. These numbers clearly proved that the superhero genre was here to stay. Spider-Man 2, which released 2 years later in the summer of 2004, made $789 million at the box office. Spider-Man 2 is often credited as one of the best superhero films and the best of Raimi's trilogy. When it was released, it was met with great praise. The film even won an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects at the 2005 Academy Awards. So surely, after the success of the first 2, this would continue going into Spider-Man 3, right? Well, about that. It was no secret that Sam Raimi doesn't have much love for Spider-Man 3, he even went so far to call it awful. Quite a few things caused Raimi to feel this way. Starting off with the fact that Raimi had never intended on including Venom in the film, he allegedly preferred to have 2 villains with Sandman and Vulture. But Venom had a big fanbase, especially with younger viewers, and in Sony's eyes meant more merchandise sales. Sony wanted Venom in Spider-Man 3, and despite Raimi not wanting to include him, Sony eventually forced his hand and made him put Venom into the movie. The result of the decision ultimately made for a weaker entry than intended in Raimi's vision, as he had to shove a character which he didn't really know much about and particularly care for into his movie. The film was received with mixed reviews from fans and negative reviews from critics. Despite Raimi not being happy with the entry, Sony still made a ton of money from it, with the film making just shy of $900 million at the box office. It was definitely a huge step down from its 2 predecessors. At this point, Spider-Man 4 was a no-brainer, with the box office success the 3rd installment brought in, but where did it all go wrong, and why have we never seen it? At the time of its release, Spider-Man 3 was the most expensive movie ever made, with an estimated budget of $258 million. Despite the film being a massive box office success, each movie was costing more and more due to the salaries of the stars and the director. In 2008, both Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire were confirmed to return, but Kirsten Dunst was not officially signed on to reprise her role. With Kirsten Dunst not confirmed to be returning, rumours began to circulate that Bryce Dallas Howard's Gwen Stacy, who was introduced in Spider-Man 3, was potentially going to replace Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane Watson as the romantic interest. This may also explain the addition of Felicia Hardy, who in the comics and the 2018 Spider-Man video game becomes the Black Cat, to become a possible new romantic interest. Kirsten Dunst was reportedly paid $10 million for Spider-Man 3. If Sony were trying to cut down on costs, they may have opted to forget Dunst and write her out, in favour of a cheaper star for a new romantic interest. Whilst this isn't officially confirmed, Raimi did say that he could not possibly imagine making Spider-Man 4 without Kirsten Dunst, which could have been a factor in the behind-the-scenes conflict between Raimi and Sony. It is understandable why Sam Raimi couldn't imagine making Spider-Man 4 without Kirsten Dunst, as she was the primary romantic interest for the first 3 films. To just suddenly write her out and forget about it does seem like a rather stupid idea. Jeffrey Henderson, a storyboard artist, who has worked on films such as Spider-Man 3, The Dark Knight, Oz the Great and Powerful, and TV shows such as The Boys, worked intimately with Raimi in pre-production of Spider-Man 4. He also let us in on some behind-the-scenes stories of the untold film in a recent interview. Henderson was brought onto the film by Raimi, who he had worked with on Spider-Man 3. Henderson recounts that in one of their first meetings, Raimi was explaining the story and acting it out with action figures, a moment he compared to as 2 5-year-olds sitting on the floor in the living room. Raimi was as excited about the project as anyone related to it, including production designer Dennis Grasner, with the understanding that he would be allowed to make the movie he wanted to make. With Spider-Man 4, Raimi wanted to have more control over the project than he had on Spider-Man 3, and wanted to deliver a film that captured the same sort of magic that the first 2 did. He wanted to include the Vulture as the primary villain, and also bring in Felicia Hardy, who was at one point in early drafts of the script for Spider-Man 2. After appearing in Spider-Man 2 and in Spider-Man 3, he wanted to have Dylan Baker, who played Dr. Kirk Connors, to finally transform into the Lizard, but it was dropped for reasons we will get into later in the video. As I said earlier, the villain of the film was slated to be the Vulture, with Sam Raimi approaching Sir Ben Kingsley about the role. But that didn't seem to work out, and the role eventually went to John Malkovich. He would have also had a daughter that would play a major part in the story, and while that role didn't officially get announced of who would play that character, a number of big names were attached. Kate Beckinsale and Anne Hathaway were early contenders, with Beckinsale even doing a read-through with Tobey Maguire. Although both were good choices, Raimi was leaning more towards Angelina Jolie for the role, and even had Henderson use Jolie's likeness on the storyboards. While there was no official confirmation from Sony who was casted, Sam Raimi himself stated in a 2013 interview for Oz the Great and Powerful that he loved what Anne Hathaway was doing in the auditions for Spider-Man 4. Of course, with the cancellation of the film, Hathaway went on to play Selina Kyle, also known as Catwoman, in Christopher Nolan's 2012 film The Dark Knight Rises. Raimi was asked about his thoughts on her performance as Catwoman, to which he answered, "I didn't get to see Batman yet because I've been working non-stop on Oz, but I hear she's great in it. I'm not surprised, because I love what she was doing with the auditions for Spider-Man 4. So it seems that despite leaning more towards Angelina Jolie and using her likeness in the storyboards, that in the end something really fell through, with either maybe negotiations, possible scheduling conflicts, or maybe Jolie just wasn't up for playing that role. I guess we'll never know." It wouldn't be a Sam Raimi film without a cameo from Bruce Campbell, and Raimi had a few brilliant ideas for his friend in Spider-Man 4. Raimi and Campbell are longtime friends, and have collaborated multiple times. Some of their most notable work together is with Sam Raimi's Evil Dead trilogy, which Campbell starred as the main protagonist, Ash Williams, in each of the installments. Probably their most iconic collaboration though is in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, which Campbell has a cameo in each one. In the first Spider-Man film, he portrayed the ring announcer, who wasn't entirely impressed with Peter's choice for a code name.
"What's your name, kid?"
"The Human Spider."
"It's the best you got?"
"Yeah."
"Oh, that sucks."
Rather than going with Peter's proposed The Human Spider name, he officially introduces him as
"The Amazing Spider-Man."
Campbell doesn't appear for the rest of the film, but Campbell's first cameo had a major impact on Peter, as he gets to be the one to name the Marvel icon. In the sequel, he got to have a bit more fun, as it never acknowledges that he had already appeared as the ring announcer in the previous film. Campbell's second cameo has him play an usher with a chip on his shoulder at MJ's play. As Peter was committed to making it to her play, the usher doesn't make it easy for him when he arrives with the doors closed. He first advises Peter to straighten his tie and fix his shoes, before blocking Peter to enter. Despite Peter's efforts, the usher remains stubborn and refuses to break the rules. Even after explaining that MJ is his friend and asks him to be there, the usher dismisses him by saying that she probably didn't ask him to show up late. And then his final cameo in Spider-Man 3. After he played the ring announcer to the stubborn usher, Campbell's third Spider-Man cameo had him appearing in a more charismatic role. After being together with MJ for some time, Peter had plans to propose to her in a familiar but romantic way. With a reservation at a French restaurant and a ring in his pocket, Campbell plays a French waiter who is more than invested in helping Peter with his surprise for MJ. Peter explains what he had in mind for his proposal to MJ. The waiter is on board immediately, but once MJ arrives, the plan doesn't go exactly as Peter had hoped. With an interruption by Gwen Stacy, Peter's plans get scrapped as a jealous MJ storms off. Despite the tension, Campbell's cameo still added some humour, as he was on standby, keeping eye contact with Peter, and when to put the plan into motion. So when it came to Spider-Man 4, Raimi had a more prominent role for Campbell. He actually had two options for the actor. The first would have been part of a montage, where Spider-Man is rounding up villains like the Shocker, the Prowler, the Stiltman, and the Rhino, which would have been a guy in a corny Rhino bodysuit and pajama bottoms, not this kind of Rhino. Finally, Spider-Man would bring Mysterio to the police station, and after taking off his fishbowl helmet, he's revealed to be Campbell, who screams, "I'll get you, Spider-Man." The second option was very different. The scene would have began with Peter showing up at Aunt May's for dinner. He knocks on the door, May answers saying, "Oh Peter, I completely forgot about tonight." He says, "It's okay Aunt May," as he pushes himself through the door, and there's Bruce Campbell. What would have followed would have been very funny and awkward. It's a shame we didn't get to see anything of this scene, like even a deleted scene, had they have filmed it. Now on to the plot. The plot seemed to be very intriguing, and truly felt like it was the Spider-Man film we needed after Spider-Man 3. The film begins with the Vulture, a Black Ops soldier, sent to jail for crimes he has committed. Meanwhile, Peter is enjoying life as Spider-Man, at ease with himself for the first time in ages. But the Vulture can't be caged for long, escaping from jail and proving to be a terrifying menace, one that Spider-Man has to stop. The back half of the film takes twists and turns to its conclusion, with an unexpected ending that puts a definitive cap on Raimi's Spider-Man narrative. James Vanderbilt, who had just come off of writing Zodiac, the 2007 mystery thriller about the Zodiac Killer, was hired to pen the script for Spider-Man 4 in October 2007. Vanderbilt was also hired to begin work on scripts for Spider-Man 5 and Spider-Man 6, despite the plot of Spider-Man 4 seeming to have an ending for Raimi's interpretation of Spider-Man. A few of the early drafts of the scripts included the Lizard as well. As mentioned earlier in the video, Raimi wanted to bring back Dylan Baker as Dr. Kirk Connors and have him finally become the Lizard, but it was dropped with the "too many villains in one film doesn't equal success" lesson learned from Spider-Man 3. Sony may have learned that specific lesson, but missed the overall point: trust Raimi and keep your nose out of it. A big issue to the cancellation of Spider-Man 4 was Sony holding fast to a May 6, 2011 release date for Spider-Man 4. This would have been a little over 4 years since the release of Spider-Man 3. In November 2008, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright David Lindsay Abaire was hired to rewrite the script, with filmmaker Gary Ross coming on board in November 2009 to do another rewrite. Then, about halfway through the process of pre-production, Sony came in and mandated that the film would be in 3D, looking to jump on the trend that began with James Cameron's 2009 film Avatar, which won 3 Academy Awards and was nominated for 9, which also became the highest grossing film of all time. Which could have been a big reason for Sony to push Raimi into making the film 3D, to in their eyes make the film an even bigger success. This pushed Raimi towards a meeting with James Cameron for a discussion about 3D. Raimi was hesitant, and stated that he had never shot a frame of 3D before, and it was something that he would have to plan on before pre-production. Raimi's vision for the film was already going to be tight to make Sony's release date without adding the 3D element. It was turning into another battle of artistic integrity against the studio's desires, and Raimi was not going to fight that fight a second time. Finally, Alvin Sargent, who helped write Spider-Man 2, came on board for one final crack at the script. Despite all the rewrites, Raimi reportedly hated all the scripts, with him wanting the film to be the best of the series, so his bar was set very high. After much conflict between Raimi and Sony, he told Sony he could not meet the May 6, 2011 release date and deliver a satisfying film, so ultimately he decided to depart from the project. So despite millions of dollars having already been spent, sets already being built, and the cast largely in place, Raimi walked away, and Spider-Man 4 got shut down. On January 11, 2010, the decision was made to scrap Spider-Man 4 entirely and reboot the franchise. Sony Pictures quickly announced The Amazing Spider-Man and set a release date for July 3, 2012. 8 days after The Amazing Spider-Man was announced, Sony hired Mark Webb to direct, and on July 1, 2010, it was confirmed that Andrew Garfield would play Spider-Man. Raimi further spoke about the decision to pull the plug on Spider-Man 4, saying, "It really was the most amicable and undramatic of breakups. It was simply that we had a deadline, and I couldn't get the story to work on a level that I wanted it to work. I was very unhappy with Spider-Man 3, and I wanted to make Spider-Man 4 to end on a very high note, the best Spider-Man of them all. But I couldn't get the script together in time, due to my own failings, and I said to Sony, I don't want to make a movie that is less than great, so I think we shouldn't make this picture. Go ahead with your reboot, which you've been planning anyway." And Sony co-chairman Amy Pascal said, Thank you for not wasting the studio's money, and I appreciate your candor." So we left on the best of terms, both of us trying to do the best thing for the fans, the good name of Spider-Man, and Sony Studios. It remains unclear why Sony did not move the release date for Spider-Man 4, to give Raimi more time to work on the film, but it seems that even if he was given more time, the scripts were just not meeting up to his expectations, and it seemed that maybe something different was best for everyone involved. The empty May 6, 2011 release date would quickly be scooped up by another Marvel superhero film, Thor, which is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the MCU. Some elements of Spider-Man 4 were picked up by the Spider-Man films that followed. The Vulture would go on to be the antagonist in Tom Holland's first swing as the hero in Spider-Man Homecoming, with a costume that resembled what was envisioned for John Malkovich's take as the villain. The Lizard would be the villain in the first entry of the rebooted series starring Andrew Garfield called The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man series, which consisted of 2 films, was supposed to have a 3rd and 4th installment, which were also cancelled, but I will save that drama for a separate video. It has been 16 years since the release of Spider-Man 3, and over 12 years from when Spider-Man 4 was intended to be released in cinemas. Despite the Spider-Man franchise being rebooted twice with both the Amazing Spider-Man films and the MCU films, fans are still hoping to see Spider-Man 4 one day. Sony Pictures reportedly considered bringing back Sam Raimi after the box office disappointment of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but the studio opted to make a deal with Marvel Studios to bring Spider-Man into the MCU. The demand for Spider-Man 4 increased following Tobey Maguire's return as his version of Peter Parker in Spider-Man No Way Home, which were released in December 2021. The film purposely keeps its life after Spider-Man 3 vague, likely on the off chance they want to continue the series in the future. Sam Raimi directed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which released in May 2022, which was Raimi's first superhero film since Spider-Man 3. With both the original Spider-Man actor and director becoming part of the MCU, and projects like Deadpool 3 being both parts of the MCU but also sequels to the original continuity, the hope for many fans is that Spider-Man 4 can be revived in some shape or form, and with Marvel currently in their multiverse saga, it seems like anything is possible. And that is all for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the video and your thoughts on how Spider-Man 4 sounded. Do you think it would have been as good as Raimi intended it to be? Let me know. Also, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. There's plenty more to come and it would be greatly appreciated. Any feedback is appreciated in the comments, it would help a lot. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you guys in the next one.